Hi, hello everyone. Today I want to talk about Psalm 37, verse 4, and I labeled this talk The Desires of Your Heart. Now, all citations, unless self translated, are from the RSV. Psalm 37, verse 4 is often used as a proof text for gaining riches. And why that is, we shall see in a minute. This will not be a Hebrew lesson or anything like that, but I just thought it would be good to use the original language and then translate it. Vehit anak al Adonai, veyiten lecha mish'alot libecha. And that translates as, and take delight in the Lord, with an imperative, and then it continues, and he will give to you the desires of your heart. Now, if you look to this verse, it seems to say that if you take delight in the Lord, then as a consequence, He will give you the desires of your heart. Now, if you look to the typical human heart, what you can see is a desire for a lot of money or gold, or perhaps a Rolls Royce or anything like that, or perhaps a perfect spouse. And those are very understandable desires of one's heart. So, if one looks to this verse, could it perhaps be construed, as is often said, that if you take delight in the Lord, as a result, you can either acquire a lot of riches or get some other really cool gadgets or gifts from God? Now, a common interpretive rule, or let's say good practice when you read the Bible, is to always remember that to read a text without a context is a pretext. In other words, if you pick and choose verses from the Bible without considering its context, you can put it to use for all kinds of purposes. This verse, for example, could be put to use for claiming that one should get a lot of riches if one somehow is pleasing God. Perhaps you can, manipulate God a bit. If you jump up and down 3 times, or if you stand on your head, or if you are going to evangelize, or if you do this or that, then obviously as a reward, God should give you what you desire. Is that also what the context says? Now, I haven't gotten the whole context here because that would be too much, but the preceding and succeeding verses are helpful to consider. Psalm 37, a psalm of David. Fret not yourself because of the wicked. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good, so you will dwell in the land and enjoy security. Take delight in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your vindication as the light, and your right as the noonday. Be still before the Lord, and wait patiently for Him. Fret not yourself over him who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the wicked shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall possess the land. Yet a little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look well at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall possess the land, and delight themselves in abundant prosperity. Okay, so looking to the context, you can see that the psalmist, which according to the superscript is David, is a bit perturbed by wicked people, wrongdoers. But then he directly summarizes what is going to happen to them. They will fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. And it goes on and on like that. Committing one's way to the Lord, and then vindication will come as light, right? As the light comes after darkness, and then your right is the noonday, and so forth. And then, again, don't fret yourself over those evildoers, and refrain from anger, because just wait, and the wicked will be cut off, and so forth, and so forth. But the meek shall possess the land and delight themselves in abundant prosperity. If you then look to verses 3 and 4, is it not likely that also have something to do with this theme of wicked people who are right now having an upper hand. In fact, if you look at verse 7, you see that the one who's prospering right now is the evildoer, because fret not yourself over him who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. The one who is prospering right now is the evildoer. But the psalmist exhorts his audience to trust in the Lord and do good, to take delight in the Lord, because in verse 3 it says, so you dwell in the land and enjoy security. Is it then likely that he will give you the desires of your heart has something to do with a vindication to live in security in the land? That is perhaps what the context would suggest. Another way to explain Scripture is to explain Scripture with Scripture. There is, to my knowledge, in the Bible only one verse that closely resembles Psalm 37 verse 4. Psalm 37 verse 4 says, delight yourself in the Lord. And in the book of Job it says, in the Almighty delight yourself. If we read that in Hebrew, we read the following. Ki az al Shaddai tit anak, v'tisa el Eloah panecha. So, when then, or perhaps then, in the Almighty you will take delight, and to God you will lift up your countenance. It is interesting to see that here we have the same verb tit anak, the yit pa'el from anog, and we have the preposition al, and then we have the identifier of the divine. Here it is Shaddai, and in the other one it was the tetragrammaton Yod He Vav He. So again, anog in the heat pa'el plus preposition al plus the identifier of the divine. To my knowledge, that only occurs here in Job, and it occurs in Psalm 37 verse 4. If we now consider the context of Job 22, we have here Eliphaz, the Temanite or the Yemenite in our current tongue, who is speaking, and he says in verse 23 onward, if you return to the Almighty and humble yourself, if you remove unrighteousness far from your tents, if you lay gold in the dust and gold of Ophir among the stones of the torrent bed, if the Almighty is your gold and your precious silver, then you will delight yourself in the Almighty and lift up your face to God. You will make your prayer to him, and he will hear you, and you will pay your vows, etc., etc. This context is quite interesting because it says here that one should basically lay all the gold aside and to, if I may make this interpretive jump, make God the most important aspect of one's life, to not desire gold or precious silver, but if the Almighty is your gold and your precious silver. So normally a human desires money, but now the most precious metals that were known in that time, or at least that were commonly used and considered precious metal, most precious metals at that time, gold and silver, you should make God so important in your life. And if you do that, then you in fact are delighting yourself in the Almighty and lifting up your face to God. And then if you lift up your face to God, when you then pray, he will hear you and you will pay your vows. Don't forget that. So basically, it is impossible, if you look to this context of Job, to say, okay, God, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for you, and then you're going to reward me with some precious gold and silver. Now, rather, that gold and silver shouldn't be your intent in the first place, because God has taken that place. He is as important as normal people consider gold and silver typically. Yes, he is number one in your life. And then the desires of your heart can obviously never be preoccupied with gold and silver, because God has taken that place. One may even jump further and make a statement, although I believe it would be helpful to look to Psalm 20 to make this case a little bit stronger. But if one delights in the Lord and puts Him on the first place in one's life, then one doesn't have to be concerned with all kinds of worldly things in the first place. That is not, as I say, directly in Psalm 37 verse 4, but we'll have to look to that another time in Psalm 20. Bottom line is, Psalm 37 verse 4 should not be used to claim all kinds of material benefits from God. Rather, the opposite is true. Material benefits shouldn't be in one's mind in the first place, but one should put God on the first place. And then it says the desires of one's heart, which obviously will be in line with God's desires in that case, will be granted to such an individual. I hope you enjoyed this talk. Lehitraut, shalom.